Okay, now let's look at extruding our shapes, and I've saved this out into a separate document. If you want to get really, really far ahead of yourself, what you can always do is, at least in the back of your mind, think about how these shapes might come together to build up a body. And again, this is getting way ahead of ourselves, but you can always have something like this that you're thinking of. So that could be, part of an arm right there, a little hand down that way. But those are very basic shapes, and we are going to make these a little bit more complex. And I don't know if we'll ever use any of these in particular. Okay, again, all these are kind of two-sided shapes anyway. We're going to get progressively more complex as we go through here, but this is just a good exercise. And again, my timeline exists. It's just floating off to the side. I'm just working on just basic vector art right now, and I'm not worrying about layers or anything else. So you can see what I'm doing is I'm just shift selecting each one of these lines that is making up this one side of the shape. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy those and get used to the hotkey for paste in place, so whatever that is on your side. For us on the Mac, it's Shift Apple F. It's probably Shift Control. Shift Apple V, and on the PC it's probably Shift Control V. And you can see as soon as I do that, you actually don't see anything. All right, it's just put that line exactly where I copied it from. But if I were to go over here and without deselecting anything, hit the Q key, I've of course got our free transform handles once again, and then I can just take this and bring it down right here. And if we were doing kind of the interior detail of this ship, the shape, we might want to leave that like right there. It could kind of look like some sort of paneling on the object, but since what we're doing is we're extruding, or at least I want it to look like we're extruding this shape, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bump it down, and when you're using Flash, you can always hold down the Shift key and the directional arrows on the keyboard, and that'll bump you down at about 10 pixels. Otherwise, you're just kind of slowly moving things around, which sometimes you want, sometimes you don't want. And because we're kind of simulating this being drawn in perspective right here, if I were to extrude out this shape, obviously we're looking down on it, so we're going to see more of this part of it being extruded out than this bottom part. And of course, once we kind of finish this off, I think you'll see a little bit better what I'm talking about. But I'm going to grab the magnifying glass. I'm just going to select right here and zoom in, and then I'm going to be sure that I have the snap to objects clicked on, so that when I start drawing with this with the line, I can then go back over here to the main selection arrow. I rarely use this one, and snap the vector points of each one of these sides together, so that we've got something just like this happening. And I think if you want to make this a little bit even better, you can kind of take those and bring them a little bit closer to that one side. So then you've got something now more like this. And to keep practicing, let's go ahead and do the same thing with that top shape here. So again, just copying, pasting in place. Actually, I did not paste in place that time. There we go. And then I'm just going to shrink it down. And then this time I'm going to bring it up and actually take the shape outside of the base shape, in which case what I'll do is I'll delete off that line and then just fill back in with the paint bucket. And then once again, just take the line tool and oftentimes I find it's a little bit easier just to draw the line first and then just go back over here to your main selection arrow and snap things together. And you know what? I didn't actually have snap toggled on, so that's what was causing some problems. And a lot of times you might want to just check to make sure that these lines are actually snapped together, because otherwise everything will seem like it's going well, and then once you start filling in color, you might not be able to fill those in. So now we've got something that's obviously looking a little bit more complex. Something you could even consider doing would be maybe taking a line like this, going down like so, and then getting rid of that and that. So you sort of got another face on here that you can play around with. And of course, after the fact, if you want to kind of change the perspective, you can always hit the free transform tool again, and then go over here to distort, and then do something like this. And again, this is where you kind of have to be a little bit careful because you can, well, I think you can just basically make it look too warped, you know. In this case, you're sort of doing something entirely different than what we had before. I mean, it obviously doesn't look like a box or anything resembling a box. And I don't know. I mean, again, I want to keep saying in this that there's really no right or wrong, but the one thing I want to avoid is kind of nonsensical shapes, okay? Something where people go, well, yeah, it looks kind of cool and technical and fancy, but there's something off about it, and I think that's the danger, and that's why we're kind of starting with these simpler boxes and kind of working our way upwards. So let's just play around, maybe work with another one down here. One thing you could do with this shape would be to kind of mirror it, and what I'll do is I'll just copy this, and then I have a hotkey set up for just flipping the object up or down, and that's a great hotkey to set up. If you watch the initial setup video, of course you know how to set up your own hotkeys, and that way you don't have to fumble through the modify menu to go find flip vertical. Okay, so that's a very useful one, I think. And in this case, what we'll do is I'll just put that right over top. Okay, and I sort of want to just wait, what I'll do is delete that line right there. So then I could just drop it right over top of there. Again, you might have to snap everything back together. So you kind of got 3 points snapping together there. And then just taking that same line and bringing it right up here. And now you can see that we need to make this side a bit smaller so that these points line up over there. Okay. And now it kind of just becomes a connect the dots thing, right? And you're not left with too many options here. Okay. You would just connect that one to that one, and that right there, and then just fill in those guys. And then you might want to get rid of that line, or just depending on what you're going to do eventually with this shape, you might want to leave it in. You could always do something like, here, I'll zoom in a little bit more. Like bring this down and then kind of have this space in between there. Of course, if you were going to do that, you'd probably want to work with that original shape that we had. So you'd want to do something more like this, where you leave in a little bit of that line. And what this gives you the impression of is that this part, oops, forgot about that. Oh, chopped off a little of that piece. It's okay. The impression you get here is that this top unit just kind of pops up, and then there's something like that would maybe get revealed under there. And again, you can play around a little bit with these in perspective by doing something like that. And you kind of change the game a little bit further for yourself when you start rotating these. So if you've got something like that, then you go over here to your distort tool. You'd probably want to bring that down. And I think that looks about right. Okay, let's pick on another shape here. We'll grab this guy. Let's do this though to kind of up the ante. Let's make this a three. We'll see three sides of this box. So we'll move this down, and of course, what we want to pay attention to now, I'll make this a little bit fatter, is that this side and this side are further off toward the vanishing point. Okay, so that means that we would squish together these points, and we're seeing a greater portion of both of these sides right here. So this would be our kind of longest line. If it was kind of really warped, it would look like that, but we're gonna go a little bit more subtle with it. And now we can just take another square, turn on snap, go over here, and then I think that without having to kind of resort to, you know, making any sort of vanishing points, you naturally should be able to eyeball where this point should be at. Okay, and right now it's not at the right spot. Okay, you've been here on this planet using your eyeballs for a long time. Yeah, you should have a natural sense of just kind of things in perspective. All right, we see squares all the time. You're probably living inside of a giant cube right now, or at least working inside of one. So, you know, just play around a little bit and see what looks naturally more correct to you. All right, and I think as you're looking at this now, you're going to go, oh, that's obviously the better you know, solution than where that point was before. Okay, so now that we've got that one, let's go and then take this square off, and we can raise that up, and I'll scale this down to about 60%, and let's take this line, or take the line tool I should say, we'll just snap that to there. Oh, you know what, actually before we do that, I'm sorry, let's zoom in just a bit, and let's take this entire shape and just scale it up some. Okay, so we're seeing a little bit of a I guess a flatter surface on the top, or just a thinner surface. And if I were to keep that kind of going, let's say if I were to step this up just a little bit further, you would incrementally see less and less of that plane. All right, but we'll just do kind of one tier upwards. So again, that point is obviously going to go down to that one. This one would go to this one. That one would go to that one. And if you were to see that one, which you're not, it would obviously go back there. But you know, there'll be times, and hopefully in this lesson we'll get to it, if the final project sees fit, where we would do some sort of like glass, and in which case you would kind of see that last that connection back there. Another thing you can do too is take the bottom two lines down here and scale them back down as well, and then similarly we'll raise these up a little bit, and then just connect those guys. So you've got something, hey, like that. And again, you can always play around with rotating it after the fact and just seeing what you could do with the distort tool. So kind of sending that a little bit back that way, maybe making it, oh, there we go. Try and make it a bit bigger on that side. What you might find is that the distort tool is easier to work with from your initial shape when it's just kind of straight up and down like that, because then you can kind of widen it like so. and then you could go about rotating it. But it's hard to argue which one of these two shapes looks better, right? And one thing you'll want to do eventually is just be sure that you keep these lines in place that are separating these each one of these planes here, because those we would fill in with a slightly different color, even if ultimately we took away all the lines, which is most likely what we'll end up doing. I'll just get rid of that one. And I think while we still have a little bit of time here, another thing you can consider doing is taking away some of the shape. So for example, what you could do is select this, copy and paste it right back in place. I'll just make it smaller, about 60%, and then I'm going to put this right down here, and I'm just going to get rid of that. Okay, and again we're going to see more of this side. All right, we're closer to that side, so if this was its own square right here, the line would go kind of across like that, and now we've got to just fill in this back part that we've chopped out. And you know, there's a couple ways you can think about doing this. I mean, one way might be to just grab these lines over here and put them over that way, and that probably is good enough, probably works. You would need to snap that to that. There we go. So that's where I'm going to leave you with this. We've got, I'll put all of our kind of polished shapes that we worked on all together. And on your end, if you're going to practice here, I'd just play around with converting some of these to having 3 sides. Just play around with subtracting out some of the shape, rotating them, seeing how that changes the perspective, and we'll come back and build some even more complex shapes in a little bit.